morning. Happy Tuesday. Today is National Sock Day. I didn't finish my socks, so I'll post them later on in the day. Today's focus is on survival and reproduction. Survival and reproduction. So survival, being able to thrive and to have your genes passed on, and then reproduction is basically creating offspring. So today's standard is based off LS3.A, which is inheritance of traits. Genes are located in the chromosomes of cells, with each chromosome pair containing two variants of each of many distinct genes. So two because one is coming from each parent. Each distinct gene chiefly controls the production of specific proteins, which in turn affects the traits of the individual. Changes or mutations, which we learned yesterday, to genes can result in changes to proteins, which can affect the structures and functions of the organism and thereby change traits. So, traits can be traded out, kind of like what we were discussing yesterday with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So, turtles prior to them did not have superpowers. They were mutant because it was a variation in their gene that was passed down and caused them to be, what are they? Superheroes? Cool. So the objective of what we want to learn today are these four things. First, genes are instructions for making protein molecules, and protein molecules determine an organism's traits. Second, individuals inherit their genes from their parents. Genes and therefore traits in a population are passed down from generation to generation. Third, if an individual has an adaptive trait, that individual is more likely to live longer and have more opportunities to reproduce. So thank you, Kenyon. I know yesterday in the classroom, you said your adaptive trait, your mutation was to be left-handed. I do want to see more participation with adaptions, both adaptive and non-adaptive, as well as mutations in the stream. My adaptive trait is the fact that I don't have asthma. My siblings have asthma and I don't. I'm better able to adapt and survive in life, and then hopefully carry on that trait to my children. If an individual does not have an adaptive trait, that individual is less likely to survive long enough to reproduce. So like my older sister, for an example, she has a terrible cold. It's harder for her to get over it because she has asthma. That's a non-adaptive trait that is less likely for her survival. No shade to my sister. So if you go through the Amplify curriculum today, you will get a simulation with the australopes. So you are able to go back and forth and then go across 50 generations to determine what happens to the australopes. Some things that you'll find are like australopes who live longer, right, were able to reproduce more. So living longer was an adaptive trait because obviously with a short life, you don't have a lot of time to recreate and make more offspring. A key concept I want you to lock in, and I'm gonna put these key concepts and these objectives into the headline comment box so you know off bat. You don't have to rush to do this right now. So the key concepts are: genes are instructions for making protein molecules, and protein molecules determine an organism's traits. So it's a lineage. The genes go directly to making protein molecules, and the protein molecules are what determine like what you look like, what you have going on internally and externally. The second one, individuals inherit their genes from their parents. Genes and therefore traits in a population are passed down from generation to generation. So like think about you, like who do you favor? Whose traits did you pull more protein molecules from? Is it your mom or your dad? I feel like I'm more my mom, and then I pulled out some of my dad's traits, and my sister is the opposite. She's more my dad and pulled out some of my mom's traits. So after you go through your Amplify lesson, if you're able to do it, you should still be going over I do want to go over these words with you all because we haven't went over them. I still want you locking in these key terms in the glossary. So an adaptive trait is a trait that makes it more likely that an individual will survive in a specific environment. An ancestor is an organism from a previous generation. So although we think of ancestors as like way, way, way back in the day, that's not the case. An ancestor literally could be a parent or a grandparent because it's a previous generation. A cause. A cause is an event or process that leads to a result or to change. An effect is that result or change. A chromosome is a long piece of DNA that contains many genes. A lot of us have seen the pictures of those. They spiral. It's the picture of that natural selection lesson. I think it's 1.4 last week. It's the cover photo. DNA is a type of molecule that genes and chromosomes are made of. ADN. So it's just literally what makes it up. So if you ever seen Maury, when they're trying to determine if it's the father, they literally use that DNA because they're able to pull the molecules and see if they match that parent's chromosomes. Environment. Everything living and non-living that surrounds an organism. A gene is an instruction for making a protein molecule. So the gene is not the protein molecule, it's the first step. The gene is how the protein molecule is instructed, and then that protein molecule is what therefore creates that trait. A generation is a group of individuals born and living at about the same time. Histogram, a graph that uses bars to show how characteristics or values are distributed in a group. So please don't forget histograms, guys. I think this weekend, I'm gonna give you a lot of at-bats and practice with histograms. You need to be able to read a histogram to see where variation changes, right? CDC is using histograms right now to determine what's happening to COVID-19 patients, right? So how is the data skewed? What does it look like? Is it going towards elders? Is it going towards youth, pre-existing conditions? You have to be able to read how that variation is distributed. Mutation. A random change to a gene that sometimes results in a new trait. Natural selection, the process by which the distribution of traits changes over many different generations. That same example, keep locking that same one in with people being shorter back in ancient Egyptian times. Non-adaptive trait is a trait that makes it less likely that an individual will survive in a specific environment. And then offspring, an organism produced as a result of reproduction. So I think that's good. These other ones we're not really going to get to until chapters 3 and 4. But I do want to move forward to the worksheet you're going to have to do today. So our little home skillet biscuit, the poisonous snoot. Who asked me to stop making jokes in my video yesterday? Come for y'all. Anyway, the deadly dare. Rough skin newt. Defenses. So this looks familiar, but it's actually not what we want to read. I'm going to read the directions real quick. Let's synthesize our learning by reading about a single organism's evolution. The rough-skinned newt, a type of amphibian, has a variation in poison levels. As the article below describes, this can be a highly adaptive trait. Read the article and answer the questions. This is more so a review. So some of the very beginning we've read already, but then as we go down here, it says, why is poison adaptive? So that's a detail we haven't read just yet. So why is poison adaptive? And then it goes here, how adaptive traits spread, which we need to know. We haven't read this just yet. We know that adaptive traits and non-adaptive traits spread, but we don't necessarily know how. I do want to read that for people who don't have their Chromebook set up just yet. If snakes are in its environment, a poisonous newt is less likely to die from being eaten than a newt that isn't poisonous. The newts that don't get eaten have a better chance of living longer, and that's important because it means more chances to reproduce. Organisms have to reproduce in order to pass on their genes, which are the instructions for making the protein molecules that determine traits. If they don't reproduce, their traits die with them. Ooh. In the newt population, more poisonous newts are more likely to survive long enough to reproduce and pass down their genes, and therefore the trait of being poisonous to the next generation. As a result, there will be more and more highly poisonous newts in each generation. This will cause a distribution of traits in the population to change over many generations. Scientists call this process natural selection. They call this process natural selection. This process did not only happen in rough-skinned newts, it has been observed in populations of different species all over the world. So just thinking about animals and certain traits that they have that make them more adaptable for living. Not like our domesticated pets who we shield all the time, but you want to think about animals like in the wild. What makes the lion survive or be king of the jungle, right? These are adaptive traits that they have. What makes the antelope the likely prey to get eaten up, right? Or maybe a non-adaptive trait is its speed. It can't really run away like it needs to. Um, Please work with me, y'all. I'm still trying. I want this to be in a Google feedback form. I really appreciate getting the emails with all right answers. I have not graded one yet that has not been perfect. Shout out to a couple people: Carmelo, Lene, Maurice, Christine. Just getting those done. And like I was telling Christine yesterday, my fear is that people are not doing this. And I don't think y'all know that we're keeping a record of who is doing this and turning it in. I would hate for we are back at school and you have like a month's worth of work to turn in. So please attempt to turn in what you can. We do have special situations like Kenyon, who's been real responsible, but he's on track even still, and he only has a phone. So if Kenyon can do it with just a phone, I know that you can do it with your computer. Please turn it in. Even if it's really late, like Christine submitted her assignment to me like 10 p.m. That's what it is. Get it turned in. So yes, that's basically it. Steps: 1, YouTube video. You're already here. 2, Amplify 2.2. Go through the simulation. Turn in the homework. Press hand in. Make sure you're logged in to Amplify through Clever or it's not going to work. Step 3, complete the worksheet. And then step 4, I have IXL. I believe it's R6 today for you. And then after R6, we're going to move up to sexuality and reproduction. But that's it. Thank you so much. I'll post my socks. Y'all better post something. Me and Miss Williams were the only people to post yesterday. I need to see your socks. Have a good day.